I honestly can tell you that the times that I've been the most anxious is when I was trying to prove myself to others. Had I said, this is all about Mozart, you were chosen because you can sing Mozart, make that Mozart be my goal that I was looking at. I did not know I could make that choice at that time.
You're listening to Artistry with Heart, a musician's wellness podcast. I'm Stephanie Lynn Bernards. Today, we are having a conversation with Cynthia McGladrey, an incredible vocalist, handbell ringer, body mapping educator, instructor, and choral clinician who exudes warmth and wisdom everywhere she goes. Cynthia is an emeritus instructor of studio voice and body mapping and is the assistant choral director and director of handbell ringers at George Fox University. Has taught throughout the Northwest in workshops, masterclasses, and music educator consultations, specializing with vocal and handbell musicians. Cynthia, I'm so honored to have you with me today. Welcome.
I'm very happy to be with you, Stephanie. Thank you for this opportunity.
I have found the work you do to help musicians play and sing with freedom and ease of artistry to be so inspiring. And in the experience I've had watching you work wonders for students of all levels and ages, both as an educator and a performer, I could not be more excited to have everyone hear from you today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, Cynthia, when I was reading up about you, I learned that you began your musical journey playing piano in second grade and played consistently through your freshman year of college. And you were also singing and playing violin during this time. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. And Can you just tell me a little bit more about your earlier years? And I mean, did you come from a musical family?
Yeah, my father was a violinist and his father was a violinist. And we had all four of our family violins. So every single week after church, all of my brothers and sisters and I played violin with my dad. So my dad taught us how to play violin. And my parents didn't have a lot of money, but I started piano lessons when I was in second grade and had them completely straight through, all the way through to college. I can't thank them enough for that. It changed. I didn't know how much piano would be important to me in my voice teaching career. I started out thinking piano was the way I wanted to go in college. But what I found was I was too social to want to spend as much time as you needed in the practice room. Yeah. And I was taking voice lessons at the time, and you could get by really well with a dedicated hour to hour and a half of voice practice, and that wasn't enough for piano. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to hang out and do more theater, and also my voice was giving me more opportunity at that point than the piano was. So I was very thankful to them. I sang with my dad in church choir and loved that when I was a teenager. So I don't remember, I didn't think people did voice like you do voice like for lessons. I never had a voice lesson until my very end of my senior year of high school. I was salutatorian at my class, and my co-salutatorian was a very high-level harpist. And we sang something at Civic Auditorium for graduation. We sang The Impossible Dream, and she played, and I had my first voice lesson in preparation for it. And I just thought, the school actually paid for it. I thought, why do you have to study voice? Everybody sings. You just sing. And even then I realized that she said, you should really think about continuing. So when I went to Portland State, I thought, well, I'll take piano and voice. And violin, I started with orchestra and quickly realized you can't do choir and piano and voice and orchestra. You just can't do all of those things.
Yeah.
So I pulled it back. So that's the story of what I did in my younger years.
Yeah.
Thankful to my family.
Yeah. I love that the instruments that you played before voice helped you appreciate voice more.
Oh, made me a much better musician.
Yeah.
I was all the people that I realized that the reason that I was a musician was because of piano and violin.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the reason. And it helped me get through theory. It helped me with everything. I had a very good piano teacher.
So with finding your voice, it sounds like that was just a very natural thing for you. Like you never imagined that you would even need to study voice in order to sing. That's so refreshing to hear, because that's not really the message a lot of people get.
And
true for you?
In church choir, it's one of the reasons that I love church choir. You just sang. You brought what you could, and if the choir director gave you some ideas, you used them. You know, some technical ideas. But overall, I mean, in college, it's a funny thing to say, but all the way through college, I won everything I entered.
Wow.
And there are instruments. I have an unusual instrument. And as I realized, it doesn't just mean that you have an instrument that's well put together in its physical makeup, but you can play it with more ease and with more beauty, no matter what. You know, there's a Steinway grand is going to be different than a spinet piano.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that it's better.
Right.
And even through college, I finally realized that there's a limit to how long you can get by with just having a pretty sounding voice. Yeah. And that's where Ruth was very helpful. And I started to realize I wanted to go further.
Yeah, I'm very much of the philosophy that everyone who has a voice can sing. And I know shoulds are not helpful, but I really do think everyone should sing.
Oh, I think everyone should sing.
Just because everybody brings such a unique timbre, a unique perspective. I mean, there's a reason that people love Tom Waits and, you know.
Right, and there's all different things that are beautiful.
Yeah.
There's all different types of voice that are beautiful. Bigger doesn't mean better. Yeah. All different styles. Yeah. And, you know, you don't have to study voice to be singing and to be making art.
I couldn't agree more. And I also read, so you were a double major for a while in college, right? So you were a double major in music and biology, genetics, and you said you were double majoring through your junior year, and then you were like, nope, I'm just going with music. So what was that moment that made you choose music over?
Well, I was at Portland State. Music for me was something you did extra, but I wanted to study it. So they said I could do both as a double major. But what they didn't let me know was that it was almost impossible to schedule once you got to upper division work. I really loved biology. I wanted to be a geneticist. I wanted to help solve human problems. I loved anatomy. It's one of the reasons body mapping is so fun for me.
Yes.
I love how the body's put together. I loved that. But in my junior year, especially when I started to audition for shows and things, there wasn't enough time. I wasn't sleeping. Ruth Dobson, my voice teacher, said, you're going to have to choose one way or the other. And I talked to my mom, and she just said, do what you want for a year and see what happens.
Ooh, I love that.
Just see. And so I went my junior year, and that was it. So I have a very funny degree. I have a Bachelor of Science in music education, which most people never have science. And I have a huge amount of science courses. So this was the change of the major. So it took 5 years because of having the choices of more classes than I knew what to do with. So it was fun. I had a great time.
Yeah, I would imagine that, as you said, really amplified your skills in body mapping.
Very much so. I didn't know at that point that it would.
Yeah.
I didn't know yet. I just knew I was fascinated with how the body worked. Yeah. I knew that even then.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk more about body mapping in a moment, because it's been so pivotal and helpful from my own personal musical journey. But I'm curious also, so you said you studied speech pathology for 4 years, and that contributed to your love of studying how the human body moves and makes music as well. And this, of course, now segues me into wanting to hear more about your involvement with body mapping for musicians. For listeners who don't know, body mapping for musicians is a form of somatic education that teaches musicians anatomical information about the body. And body mapping helps prevent injury and promotes facility in musicians' careers. And Cynthia is an incredible body mapping instructor, and it sounds like you've also studied speech pathology and biology. I mean, start wherever you want, but how has this contributed to your musical journey?
I had the opportunity to teach at U of O and in graduate school. And the first year, I'm going to change my voice a little bit. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go down to where I used to speak. So I thought this made me more authoritative and much more. I wanted to be a really low mezzo, so that I thought that would really help a lot. And you can hear that.
Yeah.
And I taught 2 voice classes in a row. In my first year, I could not get. I can't stay with that very long.
Yeah.
I couldn't get through the classes. I was hoarse. I was sore. I couldn't sing within the class. And my voice teacher at U of O, Exene Bailey, she was best friends with the head of the speech pathology department at U of O. And so she said, let's set up that you can take lessons in speech pathology for 1 term. So that's what I did. And at first, when I changed my speaking voice, I thought I sounded weenie and silly. Now I know it's changed me. And I've learned a lot from that. So they gave me 4 years of full teaching fellowship, and I stayed with both voice and speech pathology. So I have everything but my internship for speech pathology, and they axed the program the year after I finished, so I couldn't do that. So the nice thing was they kept me in the 2-year program for 4 years. So I just held off on some of my graduation things for music. And they gave me a pedagogy second master's endorsement because of the speech pathology. So that's what I went into that anatomy learning, and I loved it. I saw what it did for my voice, and I didn't expect that it would change my singing voice as much as it did, but it did. And I have always been fascinated by the fact that the human body is an instrument, always. And that the way you think about how you move is how you move. And that's the essence of body mapping, that every part of our body is in our brain first. It's how we think about how we move is how we move. And in the field of voice, that's everything. Every pitch happens because you think of it first. It's all in the brain first. So I love that. And it's always been kind of an essence of what I do and when I teach.
Yeah. So you said that the human body is a musical instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
So for a singer, everything that you do, 100% of sound happens because you think of a pitch, you think of a word, you think of a phrase, you think of the musical intention, you think of the volume. That's all in your brain before it comes out through your body. The larynx doesn't have buttons to push like a saxophone or a keyboard. It responds 100% to what you're thinking, and that's what creates pitch. That's, to me, it's the most fascinating thing, that you can go from living life and washing dishes to singing and creating music. And you can create it in different languages, different cultures, different time periods. Different styles. It's a blast.
Yeah. I love that. It's beautiful to hear it, that this human body is our instrument, and taking care of it, obviously, is how we create these authentic musical sounds over a lifetime. So I'm curious, how did you come across body mapping? Was this something you've always done, or is this something you came across later in life?
Good story. I was in my late 30s. I'm 65 now. And in my late 30s, I went to a workshop with a pedagogue named Richard Miller, Dr. Richard Miller, who's known worldwide. He was at Linfield University here in Oregon, and at the workshop was an Alexander technique teacher. And we got to go and have a session with her every day as a group. And I thought, oh, this is great, just teaching body movement. Alexander technique teaches more of a hands-on approach to fine movement. And I sang at one of the masterclass sessions on the stage with Richard Miller. And in the audience were all 3 of my undergraduate and graduate teachers. And I was on the stage singing away. It was an aria that had a high C in it, and I was singing along. And the Alexander technique teacher was in the audience. And Richard Miller was talking about how to do something about my voice. And she raised her hand. And she said, can I come up and work with Cynthia while you're working with her? Because she seems very responsive in the Alexander Technique sessions. So this lady came up and she worked from behind with me with a hands-on approach with how the neck and skull release at balance and how they relate to one another. And she had her hands and she was bringing my skull from being back to up and forward. You can't see that, but she was working with my head and neck while I was singing. And the run at the end came out better than it ever had, ever. And I remember stopping and going in front of all my teachers, it's the best I've ever sung. After that workshop, she said, there's this lady that's at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, and you should go work with her. Her name's Barbara Conable. She does this thing called body mapping. I think you'd really like it. It's for musicians. And I connected with Barbara, and as it turns out, Barbara was about to move to Portland.
What timing?
The year before. And she said, hey, I'll take you as a student in Portland, even though I'm taking a break. And that was it. She's the most influential teacher in my whole career. Really? So got to work with her for about 8 years while I rebuilt my body, my voice, pain in my body that was having.
Where were you having pain?
Wrists from piano playing. I played piano all the time. I was playing piano 40 hours a week, easy, while I was teaching my students. And I had problems with how I was using my wrist. She worked with me with that, taught me about that. I was so bad I couldn't hold a briefcase at the end of the day. Really? So yeah, it was very bad. Wow. And I was also having trouble with my jaw and my neck. She helped me with that. My singing improved. And she was forming the body mapping organization that both Stephanie and I both are members of and licensed with. She's forming that licensure program. Wow. So I got to work with her during that time. Yeah. Wow. It was fascinating to me. I've never turned back. It added tools to my teaching that I didn't know were missing. Tools of movement and understanding of the body and how the brain, body, emotions all work together at mid-career. So as I was in my 40s and 50s and teaching, it was like somebody handed me this beautiful new toolbox to add in, like a whole bunch of new screwdrivers and hammers that all helped people make music. I loved it.
So you said Barbara was the most influential instructing us down, it sounds like.
Yeah, there's nobody more influential in both content and style of teaching.
Tell me about her style of teaching.
She could read people's bodies and voices and instrument movement. She always went to the reality that no instrument plays itself. You're always moving. The reason that you make music is you're moving. You're either moving your body to sing, every part of you, jaw, larynx, breathing, everything, or you're moving your arms, fingers, hands to play any instrument, including breathing. She always brought it back to movement. And that the finer movement the movement was, the more efficient it was, the more accurate it was, the better you could play, the better you could sing. And no one had ever said that to me. Like, the quality of your movement is the quality of your music making. Nobody even said, you can choose the way your wrists and fingers work at the keyboard. They would just say, this is right, but they wouldn't really say why, how. And that's what body mapping gave, was the why and the how. Yeah. And I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved it.
You said something earlier when we were catching up that you go where you look. Is that, yeah, I'll say that right?
That's that's actually, my husband is a career music educator. He both at a church and middle school. And coach. He's coached football, wrestling, and track for over 30 years. He always taught his students that where your eyes are, where you look is where you go. And I think that's power, also where your emotional intention is as well. So if you're not clear about how you're moving, you're going to go the way that your brain is thinking, what you're looking at. For an example, if you're working with a choir And the whole choir's whole goal is when you're singing this really fast words, if you move tighter and faster with your jaw and your neck, you're going to be better. And the choir director's doing that. If the students are all looking at the choir director and the choir director's doing that and they're conducting with tension and with their jaw tight, that's where they're going to go too. So the power of what you're looking at, how you look at it, is how you move. It's how you move to make your music. Why are you doing the music at this moment? In your practice, in your performance? Are you doing it because you want to prove yourself? Are you doing it because you want to impress someone? Are you doing it because you're trying to make it be valuable to somebody else in your life? Or are you doing it because you're making music and you want the music to be beautiful and you want to represent dots on a page and say to those dots, hey, you're beyond dots. You're beauty, your phrasing, your shape. That's where you're looking. So you have to really think about what you look at, what's guiding you. That's what that is.
Thank you for that reminder. It's so easy to forget that where your energy goes, where your focus goes, is what you manifest in many ways. And I think especially if you've had any kind of negative experiences as a human, which, let's be honest, we're all human. We've all had hard experiences, challenging experiences. Putting ourselves out there as artists, I think it's really easy to just keep focusing on that, right? It's like, well, I'm trying to either avoid that or I'm trying to fix the way that happened to me before. I'm trying to prove myself to other people. I'm trying to prove myself to myself.
Right.
And it's funny because it's so insidious. I don't even realize it's happening when it happens to me, where I have had, let's say, a negative comment that's been made about something, and I'll be able to think about is, how do I avoid that thing from happening? All of a sudden, the intention of looking at notes on a page and wondering how I can make music be expression and emotion isn't in my forefront of consciousness at all. I'm thinking about, how are people thinking about me? How are people perceiving me? How is what other people said about me informing how I feel about myself? How do I prove myself musically or otherwise, right? It's this interesting sort of this battle of wills internally, it feels like sometimes, of like, where do I choose to look, right? And you don't even realize that maybe you're putting your focus on something that's ultimately holding you back versus something that could really liberate you and free you. And I think a lot of people walk away from music or are tainted by musicianship sometimes because they don't know that where they're looking might not be authentic or fruitful or
right.
So
I think that's, as an artist myself and as a teacher, I honestly believe that teaching is artistry as well, that teaching students and any musical ensemble that where they look is where they're going to go. Yeah. It's as simple as, I was thinking about it yesterday. I was driving and I was trying to avoid a big pothole. And I was looking at the pothole, and of course I tended to drive toward the pothole. Right. Instead of thinking, how can I get past it or around it, and looking at that. And I thought, well, it's as simple as, it's like where your car drives is where you're looking. So I really honestly believe that we have a choice when we're musicians all the time. We have a choice. And the best teacher, the best artist is you. You get to choose who your teacher is, what kind of music you make. Yes. If you're working with a song and after a while you go, oh, why did I think this song was a great idea? This one doesn't speak to me anymore. Ask yourself, your teacher, your collaborators, can we do something different? Instead of, or can I look at the song in a different way? Yeah.
Change where you look.
Yeah, change where you look.
Yeah. The pothole comment reminds me of, I snowboard. And so when you're first learning to snowboard or ski, people are always so afraid once you start going into the trees. Oh, like, what if I hit a tree? And in the first couple of years of trying to snowboard through the trees, I always would just look at the tree because I was trying to avoid the tree. And guess what would happen? I would run into the tree. And one day I realized, when you look where you want to go, when you really look where you want to go, and instead of looking at the two trees that I'm trying to get between, just look in the middle. Look where you're trying to get through, right? Like that's where you really want to focus on. And I, sure enough, made it through. And I think it's just interesting because it's just a slight shift in perspective, just a slight shift in where you're looking. And it's just a really beautiful reminder for performing and performing artists too. And this segues me into, I wonder if there's a connection here. I'm always curious to hear from performing artists if they've ever struggled with performance anxiety or, you know, if they've ever had any sort of nervousness when sharing music for others. I'm wondering if you have, and I'm also wondering if this where you look is where you can go concept could be applied to that if people do struggle with it. You have anything to say about performance anxiety or your journey?
I honestly can tell you that the times that I've been the most anxious is when I was trying to prove myself to others. When I was trying to prove, I was singing in a quartet with a Mozart Requiem, and I perceived that the other three soloists were much more experienced and much finer artists than I was. So I was constantly trying to prove that I was as good as them. So I was over singing and worried about stuff. And I was not a good performance because of that. Had I said, this is all about Mozart, you were chosen because you can sing Mozart, and sing the Mozart to the best, make that Mozart be my goal that I was looking at. It was very helpful. It could have been helpful. I did not know I could make that choice at that time. When I was working with Barbara Conable, she said, what do you think can help you with your anxiety? Why are you not anxious when you teach? Because I've taught groups of 500 high school students all at once. Yeah, big groups that I have to engage and bring them together within 15 minutes to warm up and be excited about a whole day of a workshop. And I love doing that. And I have the tools and I practiced. I've had opportunities to learn and practice how to do that. And so what she said is, why don't you think about teaching the song instead of performing the song when you're soloing?
I love that.
And I thought, but it's not the same performing and teaching. She said, well, you know the song better than almost anyone in the room. Can't you just teach them the song? You and your accompanist or you and the orchestra teach what you know. And all of a sudden it's like, I was excited. The nervous energy was there, but not debilitating nerves. And it was just, I prepared the song. I'll teach it to them. I'll teach the audience this. And for me, because teaching was about the music and about the joy of making the music and the joy of doing it together and the joy of that my body works and I can do this, all the nervousness of proving myself went away.
Interesting.
For me, that worked great.
Yeah. So you say that teaching and performing go hand in hand, that would you argue that you really can't have one without the other?
I would say that for a teacher to think that they're not in a performance way when they're with their students making music is inaccurate. When you're with one student or whether you're with a handbell group or a whole choir or a lot of choirs, whatever, you're teaching music. You're making music with them. You're and guiding them to make some decisions that they can choose whether or not to make a different choice and see what it does. See if they like it. See if it works. I invite a choral conductor to make a different movement with their arms and hands. And I don't see, we're always making music, whether or not, and the audience is each other. The audience is the group of the choir. The audience is the teacher. I don't think they're separate. I think music is music, and it's all. If there's two people, even if there's one person, you're performing for the space that you're in. You're performing for the music itself. I don't think teaching and performing are different in that way.
I could not agree more. And I think that one of the inner critics that I have heard is something that someone said a long time ago to me, and they said, those who can't teach. And I'm sure you've heard that before. I find that to be so fascinating because in my own personal journey, I'm a better teacher when I perform, and I'm a better performer when I teach. And I can't imagine doing one without the other. And I think that sharing your knowledge and sharing your expertise with another person or people is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself, honestly. And so I don't know if you have anything to additionally speak to that, but I think that that's something that I've heard, and I always wondered why.
You have to remember that we calibrate the value of somebody's performing artistry many times in a marketing financial way. So there's a limited amount of people, and I'm just going to use the vocal world, in the vocal world that can make enough money with their voice, their looks, their personality, their ability on stage, everything about them to be able to make a living doing that. There's a lot of specialty things. In the operatic world, for example, if you don't have a certain size of instrument, you can't do it.
Yeah.
You just can't. There's no way, no matter how much. In the pop world, in the theater world, it's very visual. You have to look a certain way. You have to be a certain height. You have to, you have to be basically a good-looking person. Does that mean that you're not an artist if you're not? No, that just means the marketability of that. So we have to remember that the people that then decide that they want to be musicians that are pro-ams, professional amateurs, or not at a professional level but very much love their music making are just as much a musical artist. Yeah. They just aren't making their living doing it. That's a different aspect of it. And those that teach tend to be good at the art of teaching. That there are people that teach that aren't as gifted as you are, for example. They can teach, but there are people that have distinct gifts in teaching. They can read people well. They know how to ask people well. They know how to they know where to guide. Like you know how to guide a podcast, for example. I think those that can't teach, no, I think they're completely two different things. Yeah. I think there's artistry in both, and there's high-level performers, there's high-level teachers. That doesn't mean just because you're not the highest level that you can't do it. Right. Yeah.
And you can change focuses, right? You can change where you look at different periods of time. And I think that if you have a gift, share it, right? The whole, and that can look a lot of different ways. And I just keep coming back to what you said about how performing can be teaching too. Like you're teaching the audience something that you learned through that journey with your music. And for some reason that really strikes me because as somebody who has struggled with performance anxiety due to, I believe, over self-awareness or over self-consciousness or whatever in not helpful ways, I think that it's helpful to say, no, you're helping people when you share your music. You're helping people understand something new. You're helping them get transported into a different time. You're helping them feel something more deeply. And I just think that when we can think about music as sharing or teaching, whether we're actually teaching or performing, maybe it takes the pressure off a little bit and helps spread that wealth and wisdom. And so thank you for that. So you chose to share a piece that you arranged and sang with your husband. Mm-hmm. And it's a hymn called People Look East. It's a really beautiful and meaningful piece that I've listened to several times now since you said yes to this podcast. So tell us about the inspiration behind this specific share of all the pieces you could have shared. What was it about People Look East that you wanted to share with everyone?
So first of all, my husband and I have been music ministers and leaders at First United Methodist at Salem for many years. So for 11 years, we were the head people, and then until like 2007. And then after that, we were interim 4 different times. This was in the end of our last interim. During that time, it was at the end of COVID. It was the first time I had sung in this recording session we were providing before we could go in person, this was late fall of 2021, we were making recordings for online worship because we were acting as the directors. My husband's a singer and a very professional level recorder player, with our organist, who's one of the best in the nation, John Stuber. And it was the first time I got to be in the sanctuary where I've been since 1989 without a mask on, singing with my husband. And it was the first time. We were always masked before that, but because we could space and there was more ease, that recording session was the first one. And first of all, we recorded like 6 hymns. It took me 2 of them to not cry because it was so overwhelming to do it. Yeah. But I love the words, love the guest is on the way, love the peace is on the way, love the heart is on the way. Each verse ends differently. And again, it's looking. People look here. Where you look is where you're going to go, whether you look for love or peace. And we decided, okay, you improv on the recorder here. Let's have more organ here. Let's do what we want to do. And just in this beautiful acoustic, be able to create art for people who can't be here safely. Because if we sing together, we'll get sick. Yeah. So it was very meaningful, and that's why I chose it. I love the hymn. I love the words. The opportunity was profound. And that's it. That's why I chose it.
There's a theme here with where you look. So as people look east, what is that referencing?
It's an Advent hymn. So Advent means the time before Christmas, and it's that you're looking forward. People look east, the time is near of the coming of the year, are the first words.
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year.
The coming of the year is the end of the year. We're coming forward. Look forward. Get things ready. So Advent's all about getting ready for the Christ child to be born. In your heart now, at that point, Jesus was being born. But now it's the love of Jesus within your heart to live out into the whole world.
Well, I'm excited for everyone to hear that. So I'm curious to hear from other musicians if there's ever been a time where you've considered walking away from music. I mean, what you've shared, it sounds like this is just from the musical share. People look east, this piece that people are going to be listening to your teaching. It sounds like overall you've had a really positive, overarchingly powerful musical experience. But has there ever been a time where maybe it wasn't so much that, where maybe you thought about, is music really for me? Or was there a season where you didn't really have music in your life as much as you do? Is there anything you want to share in that regard?
There was a time period that our younger daughter had a lot of health concerns. Won't go into detail about it, but it was a long time period. And it was while I was teaching for 11 years at Oregon State University. So I was profoundly emotionally and physically fatigued. I mean, very profoundly, like really not sleeping, but still trying to do things. And in the world of voice, you can't get away with that. The human body can't make great music when you're not sleeping. And I had a performance with a group. I was doing some French songs that my memory was terrible. I mean, you can't sing on 4 hours of sleep. And my memory was bad. My voice wasn't working well because of what was going on in my life. And so I thought, I need to stop performing, at least until things are different. And I had to make a decision of what was most valuable. Taking care of my daughter, obviously, was more valuable. So for a while, I didn't perform as much or at all. I didn't put myself in a situation that was anything other than studio singing. I just did not. And that was wise. But I think that part of it is also going with the flow and teaching students to go, and artists to go with the flow of that there are times in your life that you'll have to make a different decision about how you're doing your performing, and that other things may come in as into focus more, and that this will come back. I've had multiple students that as they finish more of their active parenting go back into performing a lot more because they can. Their kids aren't sick all the time, giving them illnesses. You know, as a singer, you can't be sick. So that's for me, something that I learned was you got to go be realistic about what life is presenting you also as a performer.
I like the idea of going with the flow and welcoming different seasons, right?
Right, very much so.
And maybe because you can't do it as much as you used to because, say, a family member is sick, or maybe you have illness yourself, or something else happens, that music can come back. And
it's not done. Life keeps going on.
Sometimes it feels very extreme. I must walk away from music now because, XYZ, and because I walked away from it now, I must walk away from it forever. And it's so not like that.
But it feels like that at the moment. And that you have to honor that as well. But you have to also honor the fact that it goes on for a while. That music keeps going. I've had more than 5 students over the age of 65, some over 70, do full recitals, their own vocal recitals. And I just had a student do a recital in honor of her 75th birthday. And sing, very fine artistry, and beautiful singing. And so you have to remember it's a long time. Piano and instruments, they go on. You can do it. So a lifetime of music making.
Yes, I love that. So I always ask my wonderful, wonderful interviewees this question of honoring your authentic voice, honoring your mind, body, spirit. How do you actively honor your mind, body, and spirit as a musician? Or take it in a different direction, how do you actively honor your authentic musical voice?
I've never really thought about it. That's a beautiful question. Thank you. Something that I teach my students is it's all about choice. You get to choose what's important to you and how you do it. And as soon as you acknowledge that and really choose that, so that authenticity comes from the reality that what we do in life is all about choice. We get to choose how we react to situations and how we use our time, what we think is important about do we choose to play in a handbell ensemble, or choose to sing in this choir, or choose to learn how to sing and play together. That's the authenticity that you're talking about, I think, that we get to choose what's valuable. And at some level, nobody else does. You do. And finding colleagues that you like to make music with, friends like yourself that believe that the teaching and the movement of the body is valuable to teach, that making music is the venue that we use. That both of you and I think it's important that music lets the soul, the body, the essence of who you are come out. And and as a singer, there's nothing more that does that, because it's actually you.
What keeps you coming back to music? What's your why?
That's a great question. I love sound. I love making sound with other people. I love choirs. I love handbell. I love playing piano with my students and feeling us make music together. I love that sound waves amplify meaning of words.
Yes.
I love everything that is why music is. And I think we're wired for it. I know we are. There's research now that clearly says that the genetic makeup of the human being, that rhythm that is within us, is from birth, is every culture through time has made music, drumming, feeling rhythms together and sound together. I can't imagine my life without it. And I'm glad that I've had the opportunity that's part of what I did for a living. Sometimes I couldn't believe that people paid me money. It's like, what? You're going to pay me money for this? Great. So
It surprises me sometimes.
it's like, oh, this is fun. But it's a beautiful way to live life. That sound is meaningful and that movement affects sound.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been so soul nourishing, so enriching, so just filling of my cup. And I just so appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom and depth and expertise and ideas with all of us today. For those of you that want to get in touch with Cynthia, can you tell us, how can people find you?
Easiest way to do it is through the bodymap.org website. So again, that's just bodymap, bodymap.org. Stephanie will include that. And when it says that at the top, there's a teachers tab, and you can reach me that way. So I'm happy to. I'm not taking a lot of new students right now, but I am doing some consulting, so you can reach out to me. And also you can reach out to me through Stephanie.
Absolutely. I'm sure people would at least love to follow up about some of your ideas today.
Sure.
So I do hope people will reach out to Cynthia via bodymap.org. Please check out her amazing arrangement of People Look East on her YouTube channel that I will put in the show notes as well. And Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you, and all the best continued with this wonderful way to share embodied information.
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able. Treat the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing.